So my name's Erin Kenny, and I'm here today with Anna Withers from the Springfield Community Gardens, and we're going to be interviewing Alejandro. I'm sorry, I don't know your last name.
Padron.
Padron.
Mm.
Okay. And so you already told me that you're 23 years old.
Yes.
And then what race do you consider yourself to be?
It's mixed between like Mexican and what would be Polish and Slovakian.
Okay.
I think according to my mom.
Mexican mixed. Slavic. Well, sort of continental, cosmopolitan. And what gender do you consider yourself to be?
Male.
Okay. And so you said before that you love talking about gardening and farming. So maybe you can open by telling me about that. How did you become a gardener?
Specifically, I got into gardening about, I think, 7 years ago now. I've been gardening for 7 years. It originally happened when there's always yard work to do that my mom would have me do, being younger and liking being outside. And she had me planting these flower transplants in her flower bed that she would try to take care of every year. And she had also bought these sunflower seeds. They were American giant sunflowers. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, if you want to try planting these as well. I figured I'd try it out. I followed the instructions on the seed packet, put them about 2 feet apart, and left it at that. And then a couple months later, I think 1 or 2 months later, I remember walking past and being like, what is this big? Because of course the bed went to weeds. Yeah. But I remember seeing this plant that was about 2 feet tall, and I was like, oh, they're like evenly spaced right where I left the sunflower seeds. I was like, oh, this is them. This is really cool. And anyone who's grown giant sunflowers know they grow very quickly once they hit their growth spurts. I've had them grow a foot and a half in a week before. So it's a very quick progress. It's a very instant gratification kind of thing to grow. And so they just keep getting taller and taller. And I kept reading more about them. I think they stopped growing around 8 feet tall for someone who's never grown plants purposely before. It was really cool. From then, I got 2 pepper plants in a pot and a cucumber. I tried a cucumber. And then from then on, every year, it was just ramping up more and more. More space, more variety, more weirder plants. I mean, I've even grown tobacco before. I've grown tobacco, peanuts, 150-pound pumpkin. If it was weird and giant, it was something I wanted to try growing.
I love that. So you were about 15 or 16 when you got the bug?
Mm-hmm. I think I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay. And did you go to high school here in Springfield?
No, I am from a suburb a couple minutes south of Chicago.
Okay. So you got the bug,
mm-hmm.
and you mentioned that your mom had some starts. Did she do farming or gardening?
No, she just liked flowers.
Okay.
Because I've been asked that before, and even my mom will tell people that no one gardens or farms in my family. I think the closest it comes to is my mom's maiden name means farmer, I believe. At least that's what a quick Google found me.
Sure.
And
what is the name?
It was Beesbor.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know how accurate that is, but I thought it was interesting.
Cool.
But besides that, I don't think anyone else in my family really, that I know of at least, gardened or farmed.
Yeah. So you're mostly self-taught, but then you met these folks over here at Springfield Community Gardens. So what has that partnership been like?
In one specific way, or just in
how
general?
How did you get hooked up with them?
Working at the campus garden, they were already a part of the campus garden. They have been for a while now. So when I started working there, I was introduced to Amanda, I believe, shortly after starting working there. And then the longer I worked there, the more I got involved, the more things they kind of started implementing, or that I just got. There's a lot of stuff to be done in the spring with Springfield Community Gardens, especially just as a resource to help the gardens a lot. That's been a big thing as well, like making these connections in order to have our garden better thrive.
Okay. So you had started gardening outside of Chicago, and was that in your mother's yard, or was that in a community garden too?
It was a little bit of both. It was, so I'd mentioned, like, I don't know, what's the word for, not conservation. I don't know how to not do a lot. So every year is more and more. So I tried growing more and more spaces. So it was pots in my backyard, and then there's a local community garden. I think it was like $15-$20 a plot. You can only get 2 plots. They're 4x10s, and then I would like give the money to my grandmother, and she could get 2 more, so that I have more space to grow. I had a friend's garden that was like 600 square feet or something, and so I did all of that. I bought my own tiller because the soil was so hard with clay, you had to amend it with compost, otherwise it wouldn't work.
Did someone teach you how to do that, or did you watch
No,
YouTube
it was
videos?
all about, I read everything online or watched videos on how to do it, and then just trial and error.
Yeah. And did you talk to anybody at like the garden center, or how did you diagnose that your problem was clay and you needed more compost?
That's a great question. That is me trying to remember from 6-7 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I think I just remember, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
Like trial and error, like you did it one way one year and then did it a different way the following year?
I can't remember a year when I just tried growing in clay. I think I must have read something or saw something that was immediately like, I think I just knew we had a very high clay content because I loved being outside when I was a kid. Yeah. And so I remember something I tried once. I just knew we had very hard clay soil. If it's exposed in the sun, sometimes you can't even get through a shovel with it. It's like rock hard. And I'm like, plants won't grow through that. How can I amend it? Yeah. And looking that up, I found add compost, perlite, things to keep a bit of aeration and humidity in check.
So now you're not only gardening, you're also composting.
Correct.
And did you teach yourself how to do that too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How'd that go? Did you have some trial and error?
That was a lot more trial and error. So composting can kind of be broken down into just letting things break down in a sense. So you can have like cold or hot composting. Cold compost, just throw it in a pile, let it break down. It could take months or years. But hot composting tends to be more beneficial, especially for urban gardens or whatever, because it's a much quicker result. And that takes a bit more, there's more rules to that than there is throwing stuff in a pile. So for that you need specific ratios of like greens or browns, they call them, as well as you need a specific size of a compost bin. Originally, mine was just this little wooden bin I built like near our alleyway, whereas traditionally they need to be like a 3x3 bin, which didn't have the room for that. Right. So I just kind of got away with what I had.
And then you had some successes, and then you
I
upped the scale a little bit?
Yeah, I had a bit more success. I read a bit more about it. I was like, I need more of a bin shape, so I took apart the old one, and I built 2 wooden bins. They weren't exactly 3x3s, but I got as close as I could. I used one for storing the compost. I probably, at one point, had like almost a cubic yard of it sitting around. And then the other bin was actively breaking down. So. And
this was while you were a high school student?
Yes.
So did your high school have any resources?
No.
What did your friends think about your farming bug?
I don't know if they really thought anything of it. I can't remember actually having conversations with my friends about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just another one of my hobbies. Especially with my friends now that I explain the hobbies I've had growing up, they're like, you were into some weird stuff. And I think they were just kind of like, oh, okay.
What kind of things were you into, Alejandro?
Well, more of the normal ones. So it's like gardening was probably the most uncommon for, I guess, my specifically demographic. And then I did more normal things like hiking and fishing. But I was also like into woodworking or smelting. So that would be like melting down metals and pouring the molten aluminum into a shape. Or lapidary, I got into a little bit. So that was fun. Off the top of my head, I can remember.
You're self-taught in most of these, or do you go to classes or watch videos?
I had a workshop class, but besides that, most of this is just I come across it at some point. I'm like, oh, that seems cool. How do I get into that? And I'll look up how to get started and where to progress.
Yeah, I love that. So that the curiosity kind of drives you into learning how to apply this.
Yeah, that's a big one. I forgot, there was a quote, and it was on the wall of my community college. It was like, the cure for boredom is curiosity, but there is no cure for curiosity. So it's like, if you're naturally curious, you will always be curious. Yeah. You won't be bored, but you'll always have something you're looking to do.
100%. So you have gardened outside of the Ozarks. You gardened, you said, outside of Chicago in that area. And do you notice any differences in trying to garden here versus there? I mean, we mentioned the soil.
The soil is here, especially right now. We're planting carrots in ground. We're gonna try in ground beds, but they're fairly new and they're so rocky. So I'm removing all the larger stones within 12 inches of soil, and it is insane the amount of rocks I am pulling out. I am using a pickaxe, a tiller to like break up the soil and get it out because they are. And I like no tilling, but they're very new beds, and there's no way we can grow something as root sensitive as a carrot through all these rocks. So I'm going through that and doing it. Whereas back home, I've dug feet and not hit a single rock or stone. So it's very different in just rocks in general, as well as I would probably have to say fertility. At least the stuff I was gardening in was a little bit higher than currently, just because it's such a high clay content back in. I mean, Illinois is the #1 producer of soybean and one of the top. Like, it's an agricultural state,
Sure.
and so the soil there is a bit better geared towards gardening.
Even no-till here,
Mm-hmm.
people till the first time
Yeah.
to get the beds ready.
This year,
And then you till it, you make it ready for planting, but then you're like, okay, now here we are.
and that's the plan. I even brought my tiller from home because the one I rented from Home Depot wasn't like, this one's a bit more. It's mine, so I know I can abuse it. But that's our plan: is we tilled in the spring, mix in the compost, put in everything else. We'll do a cover crop, and I'll probably till in that cover crop, make sure I get through any like large stones, and then
Right.
cover it in leaves, tarp it, and leave it be, and then probably try going no-till from there on.
And when you say back home, you're talking about Park Ridge,
Blue Island.
Blue Island?
Yes, Blue Island, Illinois.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Just south of, it's like where is it? Marinette Park, near Dalton, more smaller towns. It's a small town for a
Yeah.
Chicago suburb. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
our population was like 25,000 because it's completely residential. It's been shrinking over the years because Chicago buys more and more of the land.
So I'm from here, but I moved to Chicago for school, so I
Oh,
was there
I
a
didn't know that.
decade, and then I just came back a few years ago and started working with the gardens immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's cool.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you guys
it's
just
fun
love-
here. Yeah.
I love
We
learning.
did swap.
Yeah.
Really.
You came here to go to university. And you mentioned the campus garden. Are you an ag major, or is that
Yes.
the garden? So what is that? What's your role in that, and how was it like when you started working there?
As far as the applying my degree to the garden?
Well,
Or-
so did you come here with an undergraduate degree or an associate's degree?
Associates, yes.
Okay.
So I transferred from a community college in Chicago.
Okay, and now you're in the bachelor's program here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How are you finding the transition?
I didn't have a problem with it. I like change, and so I don't know. I really enjoy Missouri. I've loved being outdoors all my life, and you can only get so much of that in the Chicago suburb. And so coming here and just seeing the wildly different flora, fauna, it's similar enough to be like, oh, I can recognize this species from back home. For instance, like a sycamore tree. I can only ever remember seeing one sycamore tree in my life, and it was in someone's front yard. And I thought it was such a cool tree. You come down here, they're everywhere. Or back home, there's a bunch of cottonwoods because there's so much moisture in Chicago. But there's a little bit less here in the higher Ozarks, so you don't really see cottonwoods at all. And I like seeing that difference, which kind of spurred that curiosity for being fine down here, as well as I've met some great people on campus. It's just been overall positive. I can't think of a negative aspect besides, I don't know, the heat, but the heat kind of helps with gardening. It extends the season a little bit, so yeah, it's been
So it's
overall
not
good.
just gardening; it's also
Mhm.
kind of nature. It's,
Oh, yeah.
it's being outside.
Hmm.
Yeah, and have you felt that way all your life?
Yeah, so that's why I was like, when you first asked me, like, how'd I get into gardening? It was a bit of because it wasn't the first time I've gardened. In 5th grade, was it 5th? 4th grade, my intermediate school, primary school, whatever it was, in 4th grade, they were trying a new project. They called it Panthers Planters, I believe, because the school mascot was a panther. And they tried planting like native grasses in the little garden outside the front of the school. And they did a raffle system on who got to be in the club, because of course all these kids wanted to get out of class. So they did it that way, and I ended up winning one of the tickets. And I was like, this is great, I get to do it. I remember we had like a little meeting. I don't remember what we talked about. I was, 8 8 at the time, something like that. But I always loved being outside, and so that was like another avenue for me to be outside, working in the soil. The garden didn't go well. They planted a bunch of grass under 2 giant oak trees, so that didn't really take. But I know years later they did like raised beds, and they kept trying to do more and more stuff. So I've always loved being outdoors, and there's certain avenues that allowed me to express that.
Sure.
But I mean, I even remember my cousins would be inside like playing with their toys, and I'd be outside ripping up weeds, and like those are my action figures now. But so that's kind of what my life was.
Yeah. So when you started at the campus garden, was there a training or something like that? Did they just throw you in, or you kind of gradually learned?
I was thrown in. Gabriella tells me, my manager, I think they said I was kind of the shoe-in, considering I helped start a community garden, and I helped it from scratch. There's a lawn there, and then I helped that grow, and I've worked with volunteers before. I've started gardening. I've been gardening for 5-6 years at the point that I started there, so I knew everything. They're just kind of like, all the questions are like, do you know how to do this? Like, yeah, I've done this before, actually. So I was just thrown in and working with that and seeing the aspects I can work with at the garden.
Yeah. What kind of things do you do at the campus garden?
A little bit of everything. There's a lot of stuff. I end up being a lot of the labor aspect of it. So like when we use the tiller, I'll be tilling. If we need to dump the wheelbarrow, I'll dump the wheelbarrow, as well as I'm the one in charge of the compost, because I think I'm the only one who knows the most about it, as well as I'm writing a proposal right now for a larger, better system.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of that. There's just a lot to do at the garden. A lot of volunteer stuff, workshops we set up, a lot of harvesting, planting, a lot of general gardening. We're crossing the line now from gardening to like an urban farm, because I just helped put in 6 more 4x40 beds in the back area, and so it's
4x40.
Yeah, because each bed's I had to measure everything a couple times this year in the spring for planning how much soil we needed. So one side of the beds are 39 feet long, the other are 40, and then we added 6 more behind that. So I think right now we're around 2,000 square feet at the camp that we actually grow. And next spring I want to again expand it a little bit more.
So you said you were crossing a line from gardening into urban farming.
Yeah.
What would you say is the distinction between those two things? Is it just scale, or is it also about the kinds of things that are grown?
I would argue yes, because we donate everything to the Bear Pantry here on campus. Although we did recently start a membership where I think it's $30 a month. Each week you'll get a bag of produce. It's about 5 pounds.
You have your own CSA.
Yeah, we just started that. We just did the first bags this Monday. So we're our trial. I think we only have 5 people for this first couple months. We're going to try, because they did it in the past, and so they're trying to Gabriella has been great for kickstarting the garden again, because it slumped for a few years, and then she became manager, and it's really kicking off, as well as she put together a great team. And so I would say the biggest distinction is because with gardening, it's a lot of like, what do you like? Let's try some new stuff and grow it. Whereas we also need to incorporate, what does the Bear Pantry want? What is more marketable? Looks a bit better? It's like, oh, we're gonna harvest sweet corn. It's great. Like, I love fresh sweet corn, but you need immediately refrigerate it and freeze it, because otherwise the sugars turn to starch, and then it's not nearly as good. And with the amount that we harvested, you can't do that. So we had to like put it in our fridge, and then actually just today we were at the kitchen at Cox. So we cut off any damaged bits, we blanched it, bagged it, and froze it. So that what you grow for what purpose, as well as profit, because we believe technically are a nonprofit, because we're funded by the Sustainability Commission, but any money that we do make selling T-shirts or the subscription just goes back into our funds, so we can do more.
Okay, yeah. So you've had this experience of working with the campus garden and also a community garden here in town.
Community
It's the same garden.
Yes.
It's the same garden. It's a community garden on their campus, and and so it gets donated to the MSU Bear Pantry, where students can access the fresh.
So it's
fish.
not part of the Department of Agriculture or the Agriculture Department?
Actually, technically, no. There's an ag overseer, Dr. Alsip. She works in the ag department. I think that's because it makes sense to have an agricultural overhead overseeing it. But that's the only connection to agriculture that there is. I mean, we have resources, like we have closets we have access to, but yeah, that's the only connection to the College of Ag on campus that it has, honestly.
And SCG, we do different projects and we get volunteers and students from the College of Ag, Department of Plant Science and everything. So we're all connected, but with different projects and different just specific initiatives going on.
Yeah. Campus Garden is probably one of the more weirdly like twisted ones because like we do tabling and events and everything and people are like, oh, are you a club? Like, no. Are you a student thing? Like, no. We're funded by sustainability, which is also another reason why I'm kind of like it blurs the line between like an urban farm. It feels like we're just an urban farm for the Bear Pantry, which is great. I love it. Yeah. But yeah, so that's why there's that weird distinction. You'd think it's be a part of the agriculture. It's not. There's also very little oversight on what we do at the garden. So when we plan on what we're growing, there's no guidelines to what we do. It is completely, which I find absurd, but I'm cool with it because I have access to it. But there's no one dictating what we do with the budget. It's just, all right, go for it, garden.
Is it mostly students?
It's all students who work there, yes.
Okay.
Besides the administrative oversee.
And what are the other students like? Are they mostly ag majors or do they come from across campus?
It's a bit, it's a mix. So Gabriella, she just got her degree in biology. She just graduated. So I'll actually become manager of the garden next week when she goes into her master's program. Thank you. Claire Green is another person who works there. She's also a plant science major. Her focus is horticulture. We have Mansa. She is a foreign student from Nepal who just started this summer. Her major is computer science. And then Shelby Kindhart, who I believe is an art major, and she's the social media manager.
So
is that the team? Yeah, that's the entire team.
And so it's that team that decides what you grow that year and how much. And are they what kinds of things are they currently doing? Growing.
What are we doing? So, I'm running through.
In your 4x40 beds.
Or how many is it? It'd be 10.
That's a
20,
lot.
Or 16, like 4x40 beds. That's a lot.
And I will say to your point, like so Springfield Community Gardens, like all of our actual gardens are volunteer led, and we try to give a lot of autonomy to them, so they can decide what to grow, whether to allow plot rentals or not, or do a different format. Like we want them to, like they are truly run and managed and tended by volunteers. So SCG provides some financial support. We provide some guidance and resources when needed. We help recruit volunteers and we shout about the awesome things that they're doing. But overall, the gardens are led by these volunteers.
Sorry.
4x40 is a lot for four people.
That's a lot. Yeah.
How many of those beds do you have?
There's 16 of them. There's 10 raised beds and then 6 in-ground beds. And then there's a strip. There's one bed that's just blackberries, although that didn't do too well this year. We should have pruned a bit harder.
Hey, always lessons learned. And if something isn't eating your garden, it's not part of the ecosystem. If something's not going right, then you're not doing enough. So it's all good.
My biggest argument for hands-on experience has been my garden experience, because it's like, I mean, I mentioned I grew in a friend's backyard, and it was like 600 square feet, massive spot for just a garden, completely shaded. Like I don't think it got a single hour full shade or full sunlight, and that was a learning experience of how important sunlight is to plants and how you have to cater to that. And just a hands-on trial by fire experience is it's the quickest way to learn, in my opinion. But
yeah. So you're doing blackberries and
so it is. When you mentioned, I had a map of the garden in my head because I like mapping it out by like a graph sheet, which is what I did in the fall. So we are either currently growing or have grown earlier and we harvested blackberries, giant sunflowers, watermelon, brassicas, so like broccoli, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, pumpkins, like jack-o'-lanterns, and then smaller ones that are more for like pumpkin pie, as well as one giant pumpkin. We'll see how that does. We just harvested our sweet corn. We have beans amongst our sweet corn. We have some varieties of okra, and then a bed of cut flowers, and then that's 6 back beds. The raised beds, we've done peas. We have cucumbers growing right now, probably a dozen different varieties of peppers, almost a dozen different varieties of tomatoes, eggplant, some winter squash, so zucchini, different varieties of each, and a bed of sweet potatoes. I think that's it. And then they just put in orchard trees on the other side of the shed. So there's apples, pears, plums, and peaches. Did I say peaches already?
I don't think so, but you
No,
said they
that's-
just put them in with
Grounds. So it wasn't,
grounds,
we originally were going to write a proposal and get funding for starting a small orchard. And then we showed up one day and Grounds had planted a couple of fruit trees. And they're like, yeah, we planted them. At some point, we'd like you to take care of them. Okay, perfect. Like that saved us a lot of time. And
Yeah, they have some
Having
cool
back our money.
arborists on
Mhm.
the grounds crew.
yeah, we just got a new, so there's different departments that we like spokespeople for. For instance, like Bear Pantry, we usually have someone from the Bear Pantry in our meetings that like speaks on behalf of the Bear Pantry, as well as why we have Dr. Alsip speaking on behalf of agriculture. We also have someone on Grounds. It's just a good contact to have, considering we do a lot of work on just around. We just got a new person because the original person's retiring, so that should be a new. But she seems really into. I believe she's new on Ground team as well, so
Oh, cool.
should be good.
Cool. So with 16 4x40 beds, that's a lot of yield. You mentioned
Yes.
it was going out to Bear Pantry,
Correct.
and like what? Can you guesstimate or walk us through what some of the yields look like? Like how many pounds do you feel like you're?
I know last year I think they hit 600 pounds of produce donated, and that's excluding things like our jack-o'-lanterns because those are big, and those all got stolen anyway, so we couldn't do that. But
Good luck, urban gardening.
yeah, honestly, it's at this point I've started planning. When I plan gardens, I treat people as pests as well. So I know sometimes with people, if they knew they're gonna have a rabbit population, they'll plant in excess so that the amount that the rabbits don't eat, you can still harvest. I've been doing that for people. So like we planted an entire bed of watermelon because I know they're gonna steal a bunch of watermelon. We also did potatoes. I forgot about
Oh,
those.
nice.
Strawberries. I think that's it. I think I'm covered. Onions,
That's a ton.
garlic. I'll stop there anyway. Oh wait, no, I can't stop there. Carrots, basil, oregano, thyme, rhubarb, milkweed,
Wow.
cilantro, basil. I think now that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is really a lot. Do you have a favorite? What's your favorite?
Giant sunflowers.
Why?
They got me into gardening. That was the giant sunflower that I mentioned earlier, my mom's bed. So right now our tallest sunflower probably hit 10 feet-ish, probably a little higher because we got some a little bit higher, and we just harvested the first sunflower head today because they're large enough for kernels, so we can roast them, salt them, stuff like that. And the flower head was probably like the size of my chest, like holding it up. But
That's
that,
some good Instagram shots.
yeah, they took one of them of me holding it because they joke at the garden, they're like my sunflowers, because when they were growing and they're hitting their growth spurts, every day I was like, man, they look great. Like,
You're like
It's-
my babies.
no, 100%. The MSU media team was out there not too long ago, like taking a bunch of photos and filming and interviewing me and Gabby, and they wanted one picture of me just in front of the sunflowers, like with my arms crossed, looking proud. So it's probably my favorite thing to grow.
Besides just harvesting the seeds and
Mhm.
roasting the seeds, do you do anything fun with the heads, or like how do you consume the sunflower goodness?
So I know that all parts of the sunflower are edible, like roots, leaves, petals,
Yep.
it's all edible. Personally, I'll cut off the heads when they start to yellow, and then I'll let them dry indoors until they start to brown, and then you can just rub all the seeds off and the seed kernels. You eat like normal sunflower seeds, and I usually don't do anything with the rest just because not my favorite. I find that anything just giant sunflowers especially, they're so fibrous. Or spongy because of the, I think it's the cellulose. It's like almost pure cellulose inside. It's just really a tough thing. I know they like grill the entire sunflower head on a grill, and I've seen that.
Do that. I've never tried it.
Yeah.
I was hoping you would be like, oh yeah, here's how you grill it, but grill it.
Grill it? No, not I've seen. In front I've seen.
Figured it out
They just use it like a corn on the cob. They just put some oil and salt and throw it on the grill. But I don't think we can have open fire on campus. I need to ask because I'd like a burn barrel. But yeah, I do know people do that.
Sure of.
Yeah, I
mean, get in trouble.
I'm also a beg for forgiveness kind of person. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So,
I feel like I started rambling. What was the original question?
oh no, I was asking which one you liked best.
Oh.
There was a winner.
Sunflowers.
Is there one you like the least to grow? Is there one that's
I'm sure I could. God.
Or more pest?
As far as like, I'll say frustrating because I don't think there's anything at the garden that I'm like, ew, like really? Because I love some aspect. I'm a plant science major. Like I love, even if it's a plant that I'm like, this is boring. Just on a fundamental aspect of plant science, it's cool. Corn is a little. It has pumpkins. Anything squash. Squash vine borers will be the bane of my existence. I love growing pumpkins. One of my favorites. It was either giant sunflowers or giant pumpkins that are my favorite. But they have so many pests. They're so susceptible to squash vine borer, which is a really pretty moth. But they lay these little red eggs on the stem or near where the leaves meet the stem. And then a caterpillar hatches. It burrows into the stem. And once they are in the stem, the plant is done. There's very little to be done. And you can't, it's such a quick growing vine, you can't check the entire vine constantly. And so it's a very preventative thing to do. But once you get them, they're there. And they just, God, they irk me. On our whiteboard, we started keeping tallies of who's killing the most squash vine borers. And I think I've done 4, Gabby's killed 4 of them, and Claire has killed 3. So it's both terrific that we're getting them, but concerning because we're seeing them. It's a very, you don't see them too often because they hide underneath. But gorgeous moth, but terrible for zucchini, winter squash, pumpkins, all of it. It's a really big pest. Squash bugs are a big thing as well, but comparatively to vine borers, I'll deal with squash bugs all day.
Okay.
So
No
as far as the most annoying,
yes.
I'd have to say any squash variety.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago I want to go back to. You said you were growing sweet corn and that you had put the beans in the corn.
Yes.
And so, do you want to talk about why you might have done that?
I can. It was something I originally had read. It was called the Three Sisters Gardening Method. And so we actually struggle with at the garden we have so much space that we run into a problem of what can we fill in, and we need to plant this. Where can we put it? And beans it's not a very popular plant, unfortunately, at the campus garden or at Bear Pantry. I mean, we also get their stuff when they compost stuff, and we got 2 bushels of green beans that just don't want to waste because no one, they just don't like beans at the Bear Pantry, unfortunately.
Come on, kids.
Yeah.
Eat your beans.
Exactly. I mean, I love green beans, so they're a favorite of mine. They're such a prolific grower, which is one of the reasons they're grown as Three Sisters. So we needed somewhere to put them, and I remembered the Three Sisters. I was like, we'll just plant them on the corn. We let the corn get probably a foot tall so that the beans wouldn't completely overtake them immediately. And then we planted a bean at each base of each corn stalk, and they've been wrapping around and growing up the method. And then the Three Sisters, so the other sister would be squash, but I find it's a bit harder to do when you need to get in there and check for pests. I feel like it's more suitable for probably more American varieties that are a bit more evolved to handle squash vine borer and squash bugs and stuff like that. But so we did 2 sisters, and then the other sisters on the next bed.
So why do you suppose they call them 2 sisters?
3 sisters?
Yeah, the 3 sisters.
I have no idea. I'm sure there's a lore behind it.
Yeah.
There is, oh my gosh, all right, this is a test of my knowledge, but something provides shade, something provides nitrogen, something provides
He knows.
something else.
You remember?
Yeah, it's squash, corn, and beans.
Yes.
And everything, like, they just kind of help each other grow and provide what they need for soil, nutrients, and then just like shade, and it's a beautiful companion plant situation.
Symbiotic.
From what I remember of it, I believe, for why they specifically call it Three Sisters, I don't know, but I do know the reason they work so well together is they all take up different growing space. So for instance, corn it grows vertically. It has an upright growth.
Yeah.
Beans, they need something to trellis against, and since they produce their own nitrogen, they can do a bit better in the shade. And then any squash are ground covers, so they're not competing for sunlight in that much. I mean, it depends on how thick you plant everything, but they don't compete for competition of sunlight as much as other plants. Now, if you planted giant sunflowers around corn, the corn's not going to do good because the sunflower, it's going to shade out everything. So they all have different growth zones, I guess is what the word I'm looking for.
I see.
Are there any
The three crops complement each other nutritionally. Corn provides tall stalks for the beans to climb up so that they're not competed by the squash. And then the beans provide the nitrogen to fertilize the soil, but also stabilizing the tall corn during heavy winds.
They did a horrible job this storm. Like, we had a storm that knocked down all of our corn.
Oh no.
So we had to.
That was a heck of a storm, though.
Not even. It was. I think it was one we had like 3 weeks ago. So we had to put in T-posts and we just wired them up, and then they uprated themselves enough. So.
That's farming in the Ozarks.
Yeah. Or
Apparently.
Windy City. We had to deal with that a lot too. What did you go to school for?
Nonprofit. Business.
Nice.
Well, business management, but concentrated in nonprofit.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
What university?
North Park. It's It's like the oldest, most private school there is that no one's ever heard of, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But that's why I liked it too, because it was small and private, and we could just do our thing, and they had a really good nonprofit program.
That's cool.
So, yeah, I went there, and it was at the end of the Brown Line at Kimball.
Okay. I think Blue Island. Do you know where Blue Island is?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think the red line ends in Blue Island. So if I ever needed to get on down, but sketchy line, but it'll get me downtown.
Yeah, and we were way up north. We were in the most diverse area code in the country, which was really cool. So you'd hop on the bus,
that's really cool.
and you would hear Polish and different Middle Eastern languages and all these different languages, and it was like, what's going on? Where am I?
Chicago is, in my opinion, so incredibly diverse, and I've always compared it to a cleaner New York, because it's also just an amazing city. I mean, especially the Lake Shore is, I think, it's miles of, specifically when they designed the city, someone very strongly advocated for public access, which is why just about the entire shoreline's at public access,
right.
like museums,
you can't build
everything.
residential so close to the city, and there are not many American cities where you have shoreline and a city view. So you have skyscrapers, and you can see the skyline, and you have the nature and the shore and everything right there. It's a special.
For how much I talk about how I love Chicago, it's complete opposite of growing up, because I loved being outdoors so much. I was in spite of the city, I hate being here. I'd love to live in the country. And then I got older, and then I moved out here, and I was like, man, it was actually such a cool thing. I mean, if you just think about, how old is Chicago? Not at 350 years, but the insane amount of infrastructure that they've done, even if you take away the modern buildings like the skyscrapers or all that, the post office, the old post office, this gargantuan of the building. I mean, my dad used to tell me that there's buildings in the center where you could suffocate if the AC wasn't on, because I don't know if that's even true, but it's just, you drive under, it's this massive structure, and they didn't build it when they had all this massive machinery. It was just hard work and labor that went into building a city twice after burning down. It is truly phenomenal when you turn around and bend on the highway, and then there's just a skyline at night.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
A testament to how hard everybody worked in this country. And still do. But one of the things about the Three Sisters is I've always heard that was a Native American technique.
Yep.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It came from Native American culture, and it was very common
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm correct, they're all three of those are native America's species. The corn especially. Corn is such a unique, especially agricultural crop, because you can find it from the southernest tip of South America all the way up into Canada. It is such a widespread, valuable crop. I mean, the same way potatoes were in the Indies in South America, which is where they originated, ironically, because of the Irish potato famine. It's just such a I think it's one of the most widespread agricultural crops, kind of like wheat or oats or any of the other
Yeah.
grasses.
Are you aware of any other efforts on the campus farm to kind of like combine plants to maximize productivity of each plant, or are these three?
So those are mostly the three that I think we've ever done. Sometimes, like when we do tomatoes, we grow our tomatoes vertically, so we'll put them up on a trellis, and so there's a lot of space on the ground. We'll do onions sometimes around that. Gabby, the current manager, loves intercropping. I am not a big fan. I am very adamant against it, actually, because I find it's a big struggle, especially on the size that the garden is. Say you plant a bunch of carrots or onions, which we've done amongst your broccoli, your cauliflower, your brassicas. When you're weeding, you can't just pull everything but these larger plants. You have to watch out for a bunch of stuff. Watering requirements are different if you don't match up things specifically, or if the plants don't grow quick enough before they're overshadowed. For instance, they put in onions amongst the okra. The okra's like 5 feet tall now, and you can't see the onion. You can see them, but they're not doing anything. Carrots amongst peppers overtook the carrots, stuff like that. So there's a lot of talk about it. I'm personally not a fan because I've tried it in the past. It doesn't work as well. I gear a bit more towards either square foot gardening or traditional row gardening, row crops. But
Yeah. So, and what about native crops? You were talking about the corn being native to the Americas.
There's those squash, I believe, are native to the Americas. Beans are pretty spread throughout. Sunflowers are a very uniquely American thing. What are a lot of other stuff? Just crops are they come from everywhere. I know tomatoes, peppers are traditionally more of a tropical plant, which is why they need such longer growing seasons, stuff like that.
Sure.
I can't think of anything else. I'd have to assume onion. I mean, there's wild onion, but I don't think our onions originate for that. There's probably Eurasia area. I know that's where carrots came from. Carrots came from around Syria, I believe, and okra came from Egypt.
So it's hard when we talk about native plants. It's like how far back are we going?
It goes out the window when it comes to gardening.
It gets really complicated. Yeah. And then so intercropping or companion planting.
That's the word I was looking for.
It's like you might grow something that releases a nutrient in the soil that helps something else, and then everything's beneficial working together. And of course, there's people who talk about what grows together goes together. So when you talk about Italian seasonings and spices and flavors, like those grow well together, they benefit each other, and then you can cook with them together.
Yeah.
Like that is really interesting, and for your purposes, it's fun to talk about that and think about that in terms of what the students are actually coming to use and to know, and how much they cook. Like, I have no idea, but it's a cool idea. And I think it's kind of fun that you and Gabby disagree about that, because it just goes to show that there are so many different ways you can do something.
Oh yeah.
Nothing is wrong, nothing is right. It's just different preferences and what you're skilled at and what you understand as a grower. And then, maybe someone else doesn't get it at all, and maybe they're just looking at what will produce the highest yield versus something
I think it's
else.
where I'm geared towards. I like yield.
You like yield.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And management, ease of management, because it's like, if the extra work worked off with putting like carrots amongst stuff, great, I'll do it, but you just don't get it. You put in the effort to make sure they work, and they won't. Or even another thing, companion planting, they'll plant specific plants to deter pests. So marigolds to help prevent squash bugs or aphids. Problem is, variety is huge. So last year in our pepper bed, There's marigolds, but they're like large marigolds. So the marigolds overtook the peppers. I had to prune like the marigolds extensively. Plus, they're supposed to like repel cucumber beetles, and yet when we cut them down, the cucumber beetles were like nesting in the marigolds. So I don't really know what's going on there. I think, and I've mentioned this to Gabby in the past. She's like, you should do it. I'm like, I'm only at the garden for one more year. But I would love if I had a YouTube channel and then applying the scientific method to a lot of homeopathic gardening like myths, as far as, because she had mentioned in the, I gave her a book about companion planting, and one of them was like, hyssop is great for repelling caterpillar moths. We plant hyssop not as a companion plant, but just in our flower bed. Caterpillar moths love hyssop. Like, there's dozens of them pollen, like, because they love the nectar. And so, like, that is obviously wrong. But I always thought it'd be cool to have a YouTube channel and be like, people are like, okay, coffee grounds are great for your tomatoes. Like, they'll really help. I know it's a source of nitrogen, but does sprinkling coffee grounds actually help? Let's try it. Here's your control. Here's your trial plot. Here's the specific, they're both the same variety of tomato, and just compare them at the end of the year. But I only have 1 year at the garden, and each year would be a specific project. So, or like companion planting, you could be like, are carrots better grown as a companion plant or just on their own as a row crop? All right, here's your control. Here are your two experiments. See what is actually true at the end. Because I feel like gardening is such a wide and large hobby, especially that we just mentioned, for this specifically by a diverse group of people. Everyone says something a little bit different. Someone will swear by this, whereas like, oh, no, this. And I think there's a general truth to everything, but it's also just so much about the situation. Like your soil, the weather, about what you specifically can do, the genetics of the plant, the variety, and I just think I would like to narrow down on that and apply the scientific method to it.
I think you probably have takers. People would be down for that. I mean, you say you only have 1 more year at the garden, but you're earning a degree in agriculture. So I'm imagining you'll have a lot of opportunities to apply some of these ideas going forward.
I'd hope so. It'd probably be more of a hobby basis as far as gardening, but.
Oh, do you think you'll stay gardening and doing that for the rest of your?
Oh, if I can, I'd love to.
What do you like about it?
So I've done a couple interviews for gardening, and I've mentioned giant sunflowers. Yeah. The biggest thing that gets me immediately is seeing something the size of my nail, like a sunflower seed, or even an acorn. Like, obviously I can't garden acorns, but and just how quickly they grow. I mean, it's such a, I feel like we overlook plants so much, and we, as humans, or like even as mammals, like animals, we relate a lot more to other animals or mammals. Like, we will have a lot more empathy for a dog or even a bear because we see somewhat some of us in that. But plants, I feel like, are overlooked so much because they're completely alien. They don't move. They sit there. Whatever environment they're planted in, they deal with it or they die. There's nothing around that. And they're just purely just chemical organisms. Like, no matter what they're doing, everything isn't because they choose to do it, whereas we get hungry, we decide to eat. They just do. They just exist, and I feel like they're overlooked so much, and all of their processes are so unique and not found on anything else. So that's probably a little bit just.
I love that. That was like a poem.
Yeah, and that was my question too. Like, what do you see your future with growing food or growing anything is like? Is it for you? Is it for the community? Like,
career-wise, or just gardening?
What do you want? Yeah, what do you want to grow for?
So I would say a specific career. I'll answer career and then gardening as like a hobby or something else to do, or what I want to do with plants in general as a life choice. Career, they're very on you in high school. Like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And you're like, I am a kid. I fight to not skip class and stay awake during them. And I knew I loved plants. I think this was junior year, so I was already a year or two into gardening. I was like, plants, whatever it is. And I had looked into immediately botany and horticulture come up, and I couldn't find too much about it back then. And I it's ingrained in my head, get job, good money. And so I was looking for a job that pays pretty well, and I couldn't find something too much with botany or horticulture. A lot of it's research, and research unfortunately just doesn't, depending on what you do, doesn't pay too much, unless it's for a multi-billion dollar conglomerate like Monsanto or
Monsanto.
Bayer. I toured their facilities. I'll get into that because that was really cool.
We'll come back.
But and they had just legalized cannabis in Illinois. So I was like, you know what? I looked it up, and you can make a good amount of money doing it. I wouldn't do it on my own. I would work for a corporation. But I was like, I'm not a big pothead. I don't even really like weed. The few times I've tried it's given me anxiety, so I don't. But again, it's a plant. I find it really fascinating. Cannabis in general, like genetic wise, is a very interesting plant. The history of it is really cool. But so that's what I'm gearing towards as a career, which is great because they just added a cannabis studies class here at Missouri State. So I'll be taking that in October. I think. I got an email, they canceled one of my classes. I'm hoping it was my ag class or a business class. I don't think it was my cannabis class. I'll double check. But I'm excited for
People
that.
studying cannabis.
It's a great,
important right now.
it's a huge industry. I mean, I think this year, or they're estimated at the end of this year, it's going to overtake tobacco and beer combined. So it's a very fast growing industry. So that's where I'm gearing towards career-wise. Gardening-wise, I would love to, again, moderation. That was the word I was looking for earlier. I don't know moderation with anything I do in my life. If I like reading, so I have over 300 books on bookshelves in my room. I got into crocheting. I dropped $100 on a bunch of different yarn. Like, I don't know a little bit of anything. And that's especially true with gardening. I went from a row of sunflowers in 2 pots to, I think at my height, I was gardening 1,200 square feet as a hobby back home. And I just gave the produce away to family because unfortunately I don't like veggies too much. I am working on it.
You don't like veggies too much?
It's very ironic and it's not lost on me. But growing at the community garden, eat your vegetables wasn't enforced as a kid. So unfortunately I'm a little bit of a picky eater.
Some work to do.
I've been working on it. I've been eating I love peas now. Kale's fine. I like curly leaf.
Potatoes. That's okay.
I love potatoes.
Yeah,
But gardening wise, it's something I always want to do. I want to get a bit more into ornamentals. So ideal, I have my house. This is the house I'm going to live and die in. I'd probably honestly just do an acre of flowers, like flowering trees, do perennials amongst it, and then just have a trial garden where I do experiments, and then my own garden where I do for food. And that's a lot of labor, but it's labor of love. So if I retire, I'd probably have a lot more time to do it.
Sure.
So that's what I want to do gardening wise, but I've always loved the aspect of community, and which is weird saying now because back home I was very much growing up as not pessimistic, but I don't know. My dad's a police officer, so I've seen or heard stories a lot about the worst of people, so I don't care too much about community growing up, but I do love the aspect of community, and I love the community gardens and meeting a bunch of people of like-minded individuals. And so in the same way that I loved reading, I thought a private public library would be cool for people, but even the same with the garden. So if I had the space and I was near more of a residential neighborhood, I'd have my own community garden. I'd probably just expand the knowledge. If kids wanted to learn how to garden, I would explain it to them. I would assume have everything I need to garden, so I could show them how to actually get your hands in the soil and work. So that'd be an ideal situation. I'd probably always be involved in some form of community garden, no matter where I went or where I would go. And then another aspect of career that I've mentioned to a couple people before, but in my high school, where you asked about the resources, about if that helped at all with my gardening, the closest it came to is my high school had a very small greenhouse that they didn't use whatsoever. And my ecology teacher, at that point I was already really into nature, and so we get an assignment, fill it out. That was the homework. I'd set it aside. I'd read a book. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm done. He's like, "Oh, okay, you got everything right." And I talked to him about gardening, and he gave me access to the greenhouse. And so that's what I did there. But besides that, I had no resources in high school about any natural pathways as a career option or anything in life to do. It was just a public school in south of Chicago. It was just get in and get your diploma and get out. So I always thought if I retired or even later on, I think it'd be really cool to become a high school teacher and gear more towards the natural sciences, especially since I'm not a good student. I love learning, but the school system and structure isn't the setup the most for me. I like sitting still for hours for a lecture. It drives me crazy. But I love learning new information. And so I always felt like I could help students who are in the same boat kind of maneuver around that and look more towards being outside instead of working at a desk job. So your question of what do you want to do, those are kind of like the general branches I could see myself ending up in or doing.
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to just come back to Monsanto because you mentioned that you toured the facility. What was that like for you?
It was
someone who loves plants.
amazing. So Monsanto actually doesn't exist anymore. They were bought out by Bayer. Bayer is a big pharmaceutical company, and they do a lot of biotechnology. So I mentioned earlier, Claire Green works at the garden. Plant science major, focused on horticulture. There's 3 focuses in the College of Ag for plant science. There's horticulture, crop science, and then me, I'm in plant breeding and biotech. And so...
Plant what?
Plant breeding and biotech.
Breeding and
yes.
biotech.
Yeah.
That's helpful for cannabis studies.
It very much is. So it's why I'm glad I switched. I switched because I thought it was interesting. And I was like, oh, I could actually apply this to a career. And so for my biotech class, we had a field trip. We drove 3.5 hours to St. Louis, where they have a crop science facility. And it's very much like, no pictures. If you want a picture, ask. We'll let you know if you can take a picture here. Where's your ID? All right, check. You're good to go. Don't leave the site of like the tour guide, because it's a very big, it's multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's a lot of like industry secrets. Like you can't be sharing what they're doing to other people, to the point where like we toured their workshop. Like they have a bunch of CNC machines, like welding workshops, like every machine they need, they make it in-house so that they don't have to be like, they don't go to like another company. Hey, can you make this? This looks like it's used for this. What are you doing? No, we make everything. Like, for instance, they can test the genetics of corn, like, but you don't want to grow the corn and then test it, because at that point you're already invested in growing that corn. But if you could test the seed, so they completely made up a machine that it fills up with a bunch of grain corn. It has a little vacuum. It sucks it up. It orientates it based off of a camera. They cut a little notch out of it. They sample it, and then they can test the DNA and be like, okay, we want to plant this corn. It has the genetics we need. They made that from scratch. Like, they do everything in-house, and it's such a cool facility to see. I mean, they have like acres worth of greenhouse space that they use. They do a bunch of work on like crops, pests, obviously their genetic engineering division. They have these rooms that vary in size from as small as a closet to as large as like a 1 or 2 car garage, where they control 100% of the conditions in there. So light, temperature, humidity, the CO2 levels. Sometimes they'll release pests into the rooms to see how they interact with the crops. Like they do everything. It was such a cool tour of the facility. So it was a really cool thing of seeing of what else I could get into instead of doing cannabis or doing research. Because honestly, I tell people I gear towards cannabis, but I'll do anything with plants. Like I'll be fine in any industry I end up in.
You do get excited with that curiosity thing.
Yeah.
The possibility of like doing experiments seems to light you up a
It
little
is.
bit. And that's what farmers do.
Especially because we need it, because the world is not doing too well, it's doing hot. That's a problem. But especially, it's just, there's so many possibilities, especially with genetics. Like there's a lot of people against it. What is your viewpoint on GMOs, Adam? As such a big gardener.
Mine, personal or whatever. I mean, I'm wary of everything, and I would prefer that things just be natural and as they are. And I think, I enjoy working with SCG because they take a regenerative agriculture approach to things, and our sites are certified naturally grown. We only buy organic seeds. We care a lot about putting back into the soil and not taking from the environment. Like, the environmental crisis is very on our minds. And in Missouri, if you don't know, so Missouri has the second most farms of any state, second to Texas, which I was really interested to learn about. But, with all of these farms that are growing and, you speak to anyone in our area and they have a family member or a friend or someone who has farmed or who is farming. So, that's really powerful. And that's part of our story and what we're kind of trying to capture here. But, I mean, GMO specifically, I'm just scared of them because my body is sensitive and I know my experiences.
I think there is an argument to make, though, and maybe this is what Alejandro wants to make, is that
Not an argument.
well, the generations before trashed the planet, and now people are like, oh, we want natural things, but it's possible that tech is going to be necessary because the planet is so trashed. I would love to hear your perspective.
Well, and it
as a young
matters exactly, and what I'm so excited about, like, it matters that we have people who are so intuitive with the land, and like obviously Alejandro, you are like some of the people we've interviewed. They must be working the land. Like there's not really an option. Like they gravitate toward it. They must be in the land. And we can talk after. Like there are different programs and funding resources too. Like because luckily there are resources. We want to know about people doing these experiments, and there's support for people who actually want to take one variable and say, hey, I want to see how this does here, what have you. Because sure, like, I mean, nothing is without benefit from technology in some way. But yeah, it's really tricky, and there's so many facets to it. You can't just make a blanket statement about any one thing.
It's all
we
gray.
need to figure it out. There's still a lot to figure it out. We don't have it yet.
I was just going to say, not to argue, because my major is plant breeding and biotechnology, so like I'm going to be very pro GMO. Not necessarily pro GMO. I mean, if there's a natural way, but another aspect of it is just for GMOs, just the growing population alone. We don't have more growing space. In fact, we get less, so we need a way to increase yields, because people can argue about the aspect of staying natural and everything, and I love it. Like on my free time, I hike to as remote as I can get, farther I can get from people when I go hiking. Good, because I love the natural state of the world. But unfortunately, I feel like people do remove us from the ecosystem around us, but we're going to hit a carrying capacity. And when you do that, you see a dramatic population declines, and those are never good things. And so we need to find a way to either level a population, which sounds a horrible thing to tell people, because they're like, wait, we're controlling how many people are birthed? Like, that doesn't sound good. Or produce more food so we can do so. But I strongly encourage anyone who's like, iffy about GMOs, Seeds of Science by Mark Linus is a phenomenal book. He was so anti-GMO. Like in Europe, he was going with Greenpeace and cutting down research facility corn, and he even was a part of the crew that tried stealing Dolly the sheep, the clone. Like he was almost a poster child of anti-GMO, and now he goes around the country giving pro-GMO speeches, because he also researched a lot into climate change, and he said a pivotal moment of his was when people would say something about climate change, he did a bunch of research. He's like, why am I not doing the same thing with GMOs? And so he did, and then he found enough evidence to change his viewpoint.
There is a lot more research that needs to be done. We have a lot of questions, and just the whole topic of GMO or not, like, I'm a firm believer personally that there is no absolute, just blanket statement of what should or shouldn't be done. But something that we deal with at SCG is the distribution problem, because right now what we talk about a lot is how there is right now, like there's a lot of food being produced. It's a distribution, it's a transportation problem. So before we go to any crazy great lengths of we're not growing enough, like there's actually a lot being wasted. There's a lot that could be redistributed or just distributed better, so that people don't have to face food insecurity.
Yeah.
So I mean there are a lot of facets to that conversation. 100%. And we need people like you. Like, this is perfect. Like, we need people like you who are hungry for information and can figure it out, and are wanting to do those experiments and see for yourself, like, what can grow, and sure, there's a lot under the blanket of GMO, because you can raise something, you can do the crop selection and say, hey, here's a variety that is just more resistant to the squash bugs or what have you. And that doesn't mean that you're taking in this, crazy mutant seed that's gonna make your body not recognize it.
Yeah.
What have you.
No, I mean, completely valid, because it's still, I mean, it's been around since, I forgot how long. But
It's been decades, right?
oh, it's been over half a century.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been,
Since the 60s.
yeah, I mean, I remember, was it Francis Crick and James Watson were the two people who helped discover the structure of DNA. They both, James Watson at least, he signed a piece of paper when genetic engineering was really picking off. He signed a piece of paper when they put a ban on it currently, because they're like, we don't know. And he has said in interviews that is the biggest mistake he's ever made, because it created so much hysteria and fear behind it that he's like, we freaked out for nothing, because there's insane amount of restrictions on genetic engineering that I still kind of agree with. But as far as the control and contamination protocols that make it all but impossible, except for multi-billion-dollar industries, to afford to do. And so he's argued on that behalf. He's like, the people are like, let us do the research. But they can't, because the restrictions are in the place. So it takes so long to see any results, because there is still a lot of restrictions and policies in place. Although I think they recently got rid of a few of them, and they're like, thank God, we can actually progress with the research we're doing. But I'm also going full circle. Something else I wanted to mention is with genetic engineering is it could help very much environmentally for fertilizers we use, for a more natural pathways. I know crop rotation, corn's a very heavy nitrogen feeder. They usually followed by soybean, which fixes its own nitrogen. And so they've been for years, if not decades, trying to find a way to engineer, I'm just talking a lot, to engineer the nitrogen fixation of legumes into crops that really need nitrogen, like corn. And then not so long ago, I think within the last 5 years, they found a natural land-raised variety of corn in Mexico that fixes its own nitrogen. So you ever seen the roots they put out above the soil, the aerial roots that they have? Mm-hmm. They're covered in mucus, and that mucus supports the biome for the bacteria that fix the nitrogen. So they found these 8-foot stalks of corn growing in very poor soil, because they get 30 to 80% of their nitrogen from that bacteria. So now that they found that, if they could just take that gene from a variety of corn that already exists, it's still corn, it's not going from bacteria to corn, or bacteria to corn, BT corn. It's just one variety of corn to another. They've basically solved a huge amount of nitrogen fertilizers that they use in agriculture. And that would be phenomenal.
We need that. There's so much information to be had. Nature's already doing a lot that we haven't figured out, but then, maybe we can make some adjustments and, make that more, what's the word? Just, I don't want to say capitalize on it, but lean into it a bit and use it for good benefits and things that are going to be good for our bodies and good for the planet as well. Not just taking from the soil and taking from people and depleting the resources that we have. That's the big thing that we talk about, is just being regenerative. We want to, it's a campsite rule. Leave it better than where we found it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love to hear you talk about this stuff, though, because you do get so kind of, animated by it. And so it sounds to me like growing things is not just some sort of extrinsic value of your getting the produce, but it's also this intrinsic process that really complements the way you think and the way you see the world.
Oh, 100%. I've had this conversation with a couple of my friends, and arguments I've had with my dad, because he's very much I'm very about conservation. I love reading Aldo Leopold's Sound County Almanac is a phenomenal book as well about conservation, but I'm very big on conservation because I think it always needs some type of value in today's society. Nothing has intrinsic value. And so I've argued against my dad. I had mentioned there's a species of salamander that lives in caves in Missouri, found nowhere else in the world. And you can only go in the caves like once a decade because the ecosystem's so fragile. And if you go in, they'll die. And his argument is, well, if they're dying, then they weren't good enough to like live anyway, right? And so I had to put a monetary value on it. I was like, because he was like, what's the point of conserving something that's so fragile, it's going to die anyway? Like, what's the value in it, was kind of what he was saying. And I had to be like, well, we get all of our medicine from plants. Like, everything we know or do is either copied, like engineering wise, or literally use that plants. And I'm like, say the salamander in a couple decades, we find out its slime cures cancer. Well, we've killed all of them. Now what can we do? And then he was like, oh, okay, now that I've put a value on it, now he's cool. But in my opinion, I was like, this salamander has been there for millions of years. Its species should not be delegated to what's its value to me and my species. I feel like everything should have that intrinsic value. Same thing, I'm an ag major, but it hurts driving from Illinois to here and seeing nothing but what used to be gorgeous prairie grasslands. And it's now just corn, soybean, wheat. And that's another reason. That's personally, I'm very big on GMOs for being more efficient, so we can take and restore old agriculture land and bring it back to native grasslands or forests or anything. Because I think, grasslands are more efficient. Don't quote me on this. I haven't fact checked it myself, but grasslands are more efficient at storing carbon than any forest ever could be. Just their root biomass and everything. I mean, because it's like, half the states farm. Like half the United States, I think it's 99.9% of the native grasslands in the U.S. And the U.S. was predominantly grassland. Like, we think of the Serengeti, it's a grassland. Massive. The United States grasslands were 3 times larger than the Serengeti, and 99.9% of it is gone. It's agriculture, housing developments, or anything. Old growth forests, only 3% of those are left. And we're taking things that have been in spots for millennia, and they're gone. We're just like, we need wood? There's a 2,000-year-old tree, we'll cut her down and make a house out of it or something. It's like, I feel like we are losing something that our species will not be around long enough to appreciate again. Because, I mean, one tree, 2,000 years old. I mean, there's trees in the desert. I mean, there's clonal trees that have been alive for over 10,000 years. And it's like, it had to evolve for millions of years just to get to the point where it had to survive 10,000. Like, there's so much intrinsic history and value that we are just throwing out the window.
And that's the stuff that really fascinates you, I think, those connections.
Oh, I love connecting it, especially like applying what I am learning in my ag, because it's my plant science degree. It's ag focused. It's going to be like, all right, like forage. Like, I have a friend who's in a foraging class right now, and she's like, this is boring. We're learning about grass, but I told her to make it more interesting to apply it to the ecosystem, because I know she likes nature. Is because a lot of foraging land around here is non-native grass species, but traditionally, we supported millions of bison. Why are we not looking towards Native American grass species to support our cattle instead, that have already evolved to handle these areas? As well as there's an argument that the reason, a contribution of why everything's heating up is because if you were to take the temperature of like the air, say it was like 80 degrees, you take the temperature, or let's say like 90 degrees, say it's 90 degrees, you take the temperature of the soil under grass, it's dropped by 15 degrees. You take concrete, it's hot, as hot, if not hotter than the air. And then it stores heat, so it releases it. But, so there's an argument that could even help global warming, and stop with all this concrete, get more grass, more green. Everything connects. Everything is connected. There's no one thing that doesn't affect another. My forestry professor would put a quote on the end of every email, and I'm going to butcher it, but the general aspect, because it's like a paragraph long, but the general aspect is, any man who looks at an ecosystem and sees something small and says that's non-significant is a fool. What man looks at a machine and says this gear is small, it must not do anything? It's like, everything has a purpose. I'm sure ecosystems can survive or bounce back if you remove something, like something small, but don't act like it doesn't have a purpose. There's something interacting with it that is a domino effect, and it's going to affect everything around it. feel like we've gotten off course, but
But no, in fact,
I do like talking about nature.
Well,
so.
we're just wrapping up in the last few questions, and I think that this is a great follow-up to what you just said. I mean, the next question I want to ask you about is, what do you wish you knew when you started this journey into gardening, farming? And it sounds a little bit like these kinds of messages that keep reinforcing are the things that have been really rewarding for you.
What did I wish I knew before I started, or when I started? There's nothing that I'm like, I wish I got into sooner, because I've been into this on some level or aspect since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I probably wish, honestly, I probably just wish I got into it sooner, or went immediately more to like, there's an ag school near my neighborhood. You might have heard of it. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it was an agricultural like high school, like near, where was it? Like Midlothian maybe, or like Crestwood. I don't remember. But it's a private school, so like my parents couldn't afford to send me there. But just getting involved sooner, so I knew what pathways existed earlier on, and ways I could get into it. Because like I had mentioned before, I was like, I love doing stuff like community gardening wise. Like I love a sense of community, but I also love working on something that's going to be conservation. And that's something I still haven't done and would love to get involved. Actually, I did it once as a field trip. But
Tell me about that.
I can't remember what class or why I was there or what was going on. All I remember is that we were in the woods pulling up some type of invasive plant. And that is honestly all. It's just a snapshot. I have a bad memory for some stuff.
But this doesn't surprise me, because now you're pairing like the themes of conservation with the themes of community, and that's giving you some happiness or some joy.
Yeah, I mean, even like with YouTube, there's a lot of really cool stuff out there of just people who are into conservation or got into botany and are conservationists. There's one YouTube channel that I like, Crime Pays, but Botany Doesn't. And it's this dude from Chicago, like all tatted up, thick Chicago accent. He's swearing in all his videos. He goes out with scientists and looks at plants, and he used to like hop trains and ride trains across the country when he was younger. And then he would just spend time in libraries, and he reads like a bunch of botanical books, and now he just goes around the country helping out with conservation and IDing these really rare species out there. And that's a YouTube channel. There's people who advocate for like guerrilla gardening, where it's like planting native species. It's like, oh, here's I was at that lead workshop, and so when they talked about like, oh, what brown lots they called them?
Brown sites.
Brown sites. It's just these old sites within like cities. It's doing nothing but sitting there, and it's like, rip up the concrete, throw some green in there. There's no reason not to. Even if you're going to sell the property and give it to someone else later, why not have some green working on it like now? We put a garden, grow some trees. All right, like now you decide to develop it. Okay, well, try to keep a green aspect. Take the tree, use it for something else, incorporate it back into the ecosystem. Everything's connected. So that's another thing I would love to see is, even when you drive around more of the rundown parts of town, it's like you could do a lot here. Back home, for how many? Are you familiar with robins? Such a choice language, rundown community. It's like, I remember driving through, and you didn't go one block without seeing a foreclosed home, overgrown, houses either burnt down, turned into a crack house or whatever. And I just see such as a waste of space. It's growing all these weeds, not even native weeds, and it's like,
not even native.
It's not. Weeds. If you're going to have a weed, make it native. But there's just so much potential, and it's not being used, and it bothers me. But I don't have the time or money to organize anything of that sort.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you ever see a role for yourself in activism or in education or in connecting people with the message?
If maybe it's a result of where I grew up and how I was raised, but I'm very geared on money. So it's like the only time I could ever see myself doing that is having that security blanket of money.
Sure.
Is I can't imagine investing time into activism when I'm trying to pay rent. And unless I have the time to do so, then it's like, great, then I'll then I'll help anyone else who already has it organized. But I feel like too organized, like CGM would not exist without the proper funding, or any Springfield community garden. It's like
CGM?
sorry.
Or SCG?
SCG. I said CGM.
Okay.
Wrong acronym.
That's okay.
But Springfield Community Gardens, it needs the funding in order to do it. Like a lot of the gardens are volunteer based, but there needs to be a monetary overhead. Otherwise, it's not plausible. And I would love to do that if I had that monetary overfunding or overseeing. But
do you think that you'll stay in the Ozarks?
that is a great question, and I don't know.
You're at the perfect point of your life also to just be open to everything and not know exactly.
I mean,
what's
I've
going
considered
on.
going to Boston because that's huge for the largest cannabis company is based in Boston. Gorgeous state, as well as it's city. It's also a very academic city.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff there, and I think it'd be gorgeous. But it is also the Northeast, and they have weather problems, flooding, storms, blizzards, hurricanes. So, I feel like you said, I'm open to everything. I probably, as far as like, I'll work anywhere for a time because I would love to see the States and the world. Well, not so much the world would be cool, but I love the States. The States are such a unique environment. But settling, I'd probably stick with like Midwest, Northern Midwest, not Illinois. I can't go back to Illinois. I'm done with that state. That's why another reason I wanted to go to out of state college is I'm done. You want to go back?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Yeah.
From here.
hmm
I had fun. I'm back here.
My argument's for Missouri because I have friends who are like born, raised Missourians, and they joke. They're like, it's Missouri because they're like it's not a city. Like not a lot of people heard of Springfield, Missouri, so we joke about it. But I will argue on behalf of like the nature here is gorgeous. Like back home, it's grassland and maybe some like starved rock, like a lot of ravines, Garden of the Gods kind of esque, like geological formations. But the Ozarks are so unique and there's so much variety here. I didn't know glades were a thing. I found out this year that you can have cacti growing in the Ozarks. I found prickly pears. There's roadrunners. You can find tarantulas on these glades.
Yes.
Blows my
you go out
mind.
to Ozark Lake and walk along the trail, and they have like cacti coming up.
That is insane to me.
Me too. I'm like, what? What did I miss? Is this okay?
Oh yeah, I was
It's
hiking
fine.
and I was
It's fine.
my friend was like, "Oh, a cactus." I'm like, "A cat like that?" I'm like, "That's an effing cactus!" Like, there's prickly pear, which is an edible native fruit. I didn't know prickly pears were native to the States. I thought it was a Mexico thing. But great fruit, very good fruit. I mean, this Saturday I'm hiking something Glades Park, like an hour 15 away from here. I forgot the name.
I don't know.
It was all these business texts. Hercules Glade Wilderness Loop.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be heading
I've
out
heard
there.
of it. I don't know if I've been there.
The description I read, it's just a lot of glades. So I have a friend who she gets like weird about glades, and I understand the sentiment. So it's like a 5.5 mile loop, like a lot of rocky terrain. So we'll try that out. But
Nice.
Missouri is just such a unique. Like I know Arkansas is a natural state, but that's only because Missouri has more caves. Like I know Missouri is a cave state, but you take away those caves, I think it's Arkansas. It's a northern Arkansas. What?
Oh, I could live with that. So what do you wish people knew about Missouri farming, Missouri gardening? That'll be our last question.
What I wish they knew about it. That's a bit harder for me to answer. Honestly, the only difference for me is just the soil. There's just so many rocks here. Because as far as like a more intrinsic aspect to it is, it's the same. It's the same no matter where you go. It's all about the situation. I mean, everything I've grown here is stuff I've grown back home. You have a bit of a longer gardening season, so I'd say it's probably easier here. There's less precipitation because storms seem to go around Springfield or just the Ozarks in general. But it's just another spot. It's unique. Everything's unique. I mean, because like we mentioned earlier with how you had mentioned like native garden plants. When you get into like gardening or even landscaping, a lot of times what's native goes out the window. So, I mean, a fraction of what we grow is native to like what we're doing here. And I would say the same aspect as anywhere where you garden. So back home, it was a lot of thick clay, and it's not ideal for a garden, so I changed it to meet the aspects of a garden. So you're going to find similarities between every garden you go to. I mean, until you get out to like the deserts in the West, but you'll find the same thing around. You want loamy, high, good clay content, fertile soil, and with that aspect, you're narrowed down to the weather and how's the weather going to affect your garden. And besides that, they all share so many commonalities between anywhere you garden. They're all going to have so many similarities and overlap.
Cool. Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much for taking the
course.
time to answer our questions. And that was quite a conversation. We went all around this. Do you have any questions for us?
Do you garden at all?
I do, yeah.
What do you grow?
Well, right now I'm just growing flowers, and they're just in containers. But I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali, so I did a lot of field cropping, and I've been a gardener off and on when I have the time and the space.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just something, it's kind of a love I have. I mean, one of the things that was coming up in a lot of our interviews is people have like this kind of like spiritual dimension to gardening. And I didn't hear much of that from your motivations.
I feel like that came through strongly. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Good.
Well, spiritual, maybe not just specifically religious, but spiritual.
I think it's probably because
it's within you, and it is.
It's probably because I feel like where my comes from. So I have a cousin who's I think she's garden or tried. She's very like spiritual. She's borderline hippie, but she's very much like, oh, the plant. What's the word is when you apply human characteristics to something? Anthropomorphizing. I think a lot of spirituality, especially with nature, comes from anthropomorphizing it. Like you look at a tree, you're like, man, this tree, it's been around, and like I can't imagine what it was like to stand here, do this, or the plant just braving the weather and being out here. I think of more of it as from a scientific aspect and more of a respect thing, because it's like I've killed many plants gardening, but I still have some level of respect because it's a living thing. Like I mentioned before, it's something we don't anthropomorphize as much as like other mammals or animals because it's a plant. But I do think my spirituality, whatever, words are hard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Comes from more of a general curiosity and scientific aspect of just amazement. Because like I mentioned earlier, I'm not religious. So it's like from going from a bunch of atoms in space to where we are of just the amount, I don't know, just the world's cool. It's a cool planet.
Very cool.
And
you never run out of things to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
Yeah, please don't give up. Please keep the enthusiasm and just keep going because we need it so bad.
Yeah,
The planet needs it.